I don't want to waste your time, so there won't be an intro. So, it finally happened. You successfully peer pressured me into making a Teller's Archives guide. The reason why I was kinda hesitant about doing it is that I honestly wouldn't recommend playing this site. Don't get me wrong, it's a perfectly viable site. In fact, it's much better than CEO. In Pro League, that is. Teller's Archives is just one of those sites that is really difficult to play optimally. But if you're up to the challenge, this video is for you. The thing that sets Teller's Archives apart from all the other sites in the game is of course the fact that it's a split site. And having to defend a split site is a pretty daunting task. But it's not the reason why Teller's Archives appears to be a weak site. In fact, if the site was Visa Tellers instead, it would be much weaker. The real problem for Tellers is that there are no buffer rooms. Visa is not a playable position, Lobby is not a playable position, and the connectors and stairs between them also aren't playable positions. So, right off the bat, there's no intuitive way of defending the site, which obviously scares people away. And honestly, you should be scared. Again, defending Tellers is actually pretty difficult. But there's also an upside, because I'm sure that no one you will meet in Ranked actually knows the theory on how to attack it, and that can actually be quite difficult too. The strat that I'm about to show you is an adapted version of one of the ways the site is defended in Pro League. And on the surface, it's going to look rather simple, at least from a theory perspective. But once it comes to actually executing the idea, it gets quite difficult. But I do think that this version is actually playable in, let's say, Plat and above. Alright, so what are we doing? First up, we are pretty much ignoring the entire top and ground floor of the map. The only thing we care about is the basement. And here, the question that immediately comes to mind is, if all of our defenders are in the basement, how are we going to defend Tellers? And the answer is C4s from below. That is going to be the main win condition for the strategy. So understanding this idea and the nuances around it is really the most important thing about the setup. The cornerstone of our vertical plant denial is going to be pulls. Not only because it's really easy to get C4 kills yourself, but also because you can increase the effectiveness of the other C4 operators. Speaking of those, it's obviously not enough to just play one C4, so we are also going to play Mira and Melusi. And this is where the hard part starts. In order for this to work, Pulse really needs to do his homework. Just based on seeing the heartbeat, he needs to know where exactly the plant is going down. Because even though the entire floor in Tellers is destructible, there are still a few spots that you can't reach with C4s. If the attackers plant on one of the tables in the middle, the ledge between them, or on this cabinet, they are immune to C4s from below. So in order to deny these plant spots, we have to get a bit creative. Sure, we can't just C4 the floor itself, but we can open a hole in the floor and then throw the C4 through it so that it lands on top of the attackers. And that's exactly what we're doing for every possible plant spot. So we need holes here, 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 and here. Now, getting C4 kills with pulls might sound pretty simple, but there is a lot that can go wrong here. Denying the first plant is comparatively easy, because pulls can just do it entirely on his own. But for any follow-up attempts, you actually need quite a bit of coordination. Pulls needs to spot that someone is planting. Then he needs to know where exactly the attackers are planting, and then he needs to communicate where Mira or Melusi need to throw their C4s. And that's a lot harder than it initially seems. One tip that I can give is to be very careful with your Z-pings. A lot of Pulse players like to Z-ping whenever they see an opponent, and that's totally fine. But on this particular defense, you should only Z-ping once the plant is actually going down. That way you minimize potential confusion. Another way in which this bomb site differs from any other is regarding your style of using C4s. For this defense, you need to be really conservative with them. You're going to have quite a few opportunities to get kills in Visa, and I think if it's one of those 100% safe kills, then you can still go for those. But if there's even the slightest risk of missing, you should probably save your C4. Because remember, if you are out of C4s, you just can't deny the plant anymore. So, as you can see, that's quite a bit of responsibility on the shoulders of the Pulse player. And in order to maybe lighten that a little bit, we are also going to play Maestro and put both Evil Eyes on opposite ends in Tellers, just to get some additional information, for example when Pulse happen to die early. But basically, this is it for our setup when it comes to denying Tellers plans. We got Pulse and Maestro for information and tellers. We got Pulse, Melusi, and Mira to C4 plants. And we got holes in the floor in order to reach the remaining spots. In terms of reinforcements, we are going to get 2 in tellers to Visa, and then all 3 hedges around the site. That might initially seem a bit weird, but we really want to make sure that the attackers are going for a plant in tellers, because planting is in fact not the optimal way of playing this attack. If you ever find yourself attacking tellers, try to just go for kills in archives instead. That's going to save you a lot of hassle. So now we've taken care of tellers, but there is a good chance that a lot of attackers might go for garage attacks instead. In my opinion, those are not particularly strong, but you're definitely going to see them. And this is where Mira comes into play. I've already said that we are going to play 5 people in the basement, but of course we don't restrict our defense to archives alone. With a Mira window in security, and 2 reinforcements in cafeteria to garage, we can easily fight off any kind of garage take. In regards to how exactly you should play this, you have quite a few options. What I like the most is Castle playing deep in the corner with Melusi just outside cafeteria door, and then Maestro in security with Mira just outside security hallway. That way, it's very difficult for the attackers to find an opening without immediately being traded. Just be aware that if you do something like that, you always have to make sure that Pulse is staying behind so that you don't get backstabbed. Another thing that's important to note here is that you don't need to win the round in cafeteria and security. For example, if the cafeteria wall gets breached or if Hibana manages to open the security mirror, it's probably better to fall back. Because even with control of that part of the map, the situation of the attackers didn't really improve that much. And that is mainly because we are playing this mirror window in archives, which gives us a really nice angle on the exit of security hallway. But even without that mirror, there are a bunch of nasty pixel peaks that you can play around server, and the attackers will 100% not be ready for those. Moving our attention towards the other side, the only thing we really need to deal with any blue hall pushes is this wall in Harry Potter, a rotation between server and blue, and a bulletproof camera at the end of the hallway. Okay, so that should be all you need against garage side takes. One last tip though, if you are in the situation where you lost cafeteria and security, don't be afraid to walk up either Visa or Spiral stairs. Because if the attackers are in lockers, it's really awkward for them to play around defenders on the staircases. But alright, that's pretty much it for our setup on the basement. For the sake of completion, we of course also need a rotation hole in server to storage, so that we can rotate in to deny tellers plants with C4. By now, we have a pretty solid foundation against both garage and Visa takes. But there are a few more things that we can do to build up on that, and those require castle. Maybe you would have expected smoke or Jaeger here, because that's kind of what you usually do, but tellers is not your usual bomb site. I think that against garage takes, Jaeger or smoke might be better than castle, but against Visa takes, both of them are pretty irrelevant. And there are some cool things that we can do with castle. For example, if we castle this door between Visa and Visa stairs, then Melusi can start the round playing on Visa stairs. Obviously, your only objective here is to waste time. At some point, the attackers will open a castle barricade or push you from top Visa stairs. And in both cases, you probably want to fall back. But I do think that by playing around the castle barricade and shooting drones, you can waste quite a bit of time. The last play I want to talk about is the possibility of going for flanks, because especially against Visa attacks, you're going to have a bunch of opportunities. It's actually very difficult for attackers to have proper flank watch. Most teams will probably manage to watch bottom Visa stairs, but it's usually kind of easy to flank using spiral stairs and teller's hallway. And the castle barricades that we are using amplify that. One in spiral to lobby, and the other one in teller's hall to Visa. With those in place, we always have the option of either walking up yellow or spiral stairs, and then we can eventually crouch walk up into tellers. That's especially interesting for Castle and Maestro, or for Mira and Melusi once they've thrown their C4s. As you might know, I'm usually not that big of a fan of going for flanks, but here it's actually consistently strong to do so. One last tip, if you still have at least one evil eye in tellers, you can use Pulse to check if the attackers are watching flanks on spiral stairs, because his scanner actually goes all the way up to top spiral. But be careful, I've seen a number of pro league rounds that were lost because Pulse was running around on the other side of the map. But in general, I do think that flanking is actually pretty good here. Alright, that's pretty much the strat. Let's recap. Against garage takes, we are going to waste time and or fight in cafeteria using the mirror window in security. Once we lose control, we just fall back deeper towards the side and use the second mirror window in archives. Together with maybe pressuring a flank from spiral, yellow, or visa stairs, garage attacks shouldn't pose too much of a threat. If that's all you run into though, feel free to use Melusi's banshees around lockers and maybe play Jaeger or Smoke instead of Castle. The attack that's typically much more dangerous is the visa side take, where the attackers are going for a plant in tellers. First of all, we are going to be able to waste some time with Melusi playing on visa stairs. Once we inevitably lose control of the ground floor, we're going to switch our focus to using C4s to deny the plant in tellers. And here, Pulse has a lot of responsibility. If your Pulse doesn't properly communicate the plant position for Mira and Melusi, then you basically just lose. But in that case, a potential secondary win condition that we have set up are flanks using Teller's Hall. Both Maestro and Castle can potentially look for those, and that's a pretty nice way of either denying the plant if all your side players are out of C4s, or retaking the side in a potential post-plant situation. Okay, that's pretty much it for the strategy. Like I said at the start, it is a pretty difficult one. It might look kind of innocent on the surface, but the execution is actually really hard. Especially communicating in the heat of the moment when it comes to denying plans is probably going to be quite a challenge for a lot of people. But if you want to give it a shot, I put a link to all the final slides in the description of the video. And feel free to let me know how it worked for you. Alright, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you learned something new, and thanks for watching.